Eric said it's on.
Okay.
Excuse me, please wait.
So I guess Eric had sound in now all he has is
Oh, no,
noise.
I know, yeah. I just realized more.
Oh, okay, cool.
I got it. It should be coming back on in just a minute.
Okay.
Calvin, there's no more on that sign. No, there's no more on that sign.
Walk closer to the building.
So now we can figure out what we're doing. So we can be right there. We can do this next month. This is our last one, right? This is our last one. What happened to those two? How many seats do you need to take?
Sorry, we keep bugging you. So he says not understand this.
The main camera has background audio with the audience's conversation. While the camera has noise.
I'm not sure what. So you can't hear it, or
TEDx logo. I have no idea what that means.
yeah, TEDx logo is what? What is
Is
it?
that?
Yeah,
It's the TEDx logo top.
yeah, right there. You're not supposed to have that. That is the my second camera.
You know what?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
That doesn't sound very excited. Good evening. Isn't this exciting? Well, I'm telling you, we're all looking forward to it. Incidentally, I'm Bob Craddock, the president of this wonderful college, and we are really grateful for you being here. It's going to be an exciting evening. I'm not going to talk a lot. I'm going to introduce two people, though, who have put heart, soul, sweat. Women don't sweat, right? But I'm telling you, they have put so much energy into this evening for about a year and a half or more. And I'm very happy that the campus was able to provide funds for them to do their creative genius. About a year and a half ago, they submitted a proposal to do this event, and this is the culmination of their work. And so I'm very proud and honored to introduce to you Dr. Lori Huffman and Marie Archidiacono.
Buenas tardes. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to LMC's first TEDx event. We're very excited. My name is Lori Huffman, and I am a faculty member here at Los Medanos. But most importantly, I am part of the Marie and Lori.
We actually got a TEDx license duo. And I just want to say that there is no one else that I would want to do a project like this with except Marie. And I just have to say, if it wasn't for you, really, if it wasn't for you, this wouldn't be happening tonight. So Marie gets the hand for the evening. So one of the things I've learned about LMC from the day I arrived on this campus, that it was a highly innovative campus. When I was a pre-tenured faculty, there was an article in the New York Times about Los Medanos College being one of those innovative campuses in California. And I wasn't tenured yet, and I thought, wow, that must mean they let us do stuff. So they let us do stuff this time. So what I've learned as well is if you throw a dream out into the academic universe, it usually comes back and it lands right here at this award-winning college. Besides being number 6 on the College Choice Awards, Los Medanos College tonight is on the TEDx world map. You can actually find it on the TED site. You look at the map and it says LMC for tonight. So, excuse that I have to do some reading, but TEDx has mandated me to, maybe I should say, push their agenda a bit. So I'm going to do some reading, and we're going to watch a short video in a few minutes. So as you know, TED, the acronym for Technology, Entertainment, and Design, is a nonprofit organization devoted to ideas worth spreading. Started as a conference here in California over 30 years ago, annual TED conferences take place now all over the world. Many of the world's leading thinkers and doers speak for 18 minutes or less. Tonight, I think we're at about 11 and 12 minutes for each of our speakers. Many of these talks have been made available on the TED site. It's just www.ted.com, or just ask Siri. Siri or Alexa, they'll play any one of those for you. Many of the TED speakers you know, examples of a few, Bill Gates, Jane Goodall, and of course, our superstars. Now, tonight, we'll share with you the topic of the future of everything. This venue is also being broadcast live via webcast, YouTube, and I'm not certain, possibly Facebook as well. And we have that overflow crowd in L109. So for those of you that didn't know that, we had many, many people that were interested in being here tonight. You are the lucky 100 attendees, of which we're going to ask you a favor. You all were asked to give your email addresses, and TED will directly send you a survey. That survey is extremely important to us because without your feedback, we would not be able to, I should say, apply for future TEDx licensure. So if, and I'm sure we have met every license particular, if we can get your email response, your survey, we need 100 for them to legitimately say that we have met all the prerequisites and we can offer TED again at LMC. So if you didn't put your email, I have to thank all these wonderful people that have helped us tonight as well. But you have a few faculty members outside, some ushers and others that will make certain before you leave that that email is listed on the attendee roster. So I have to thank President Bob Crowderville. I have to thank our deans. I have to thank Jennifer Adams. They believed in our idea. We applied for the innovation grant. We were sitting on a table in front of the honors, right? And we just said, wouldn't it be so cool to bring TEDx to LMC? And it was a dream. And our administration had made that dream come true. Initially, we were a little afraid to offer, right off the bat, a TED Talks program. So we invented, Marie and myself, sort of a precursor called Evening of Cultural Conversations. And we ran 2 of them. Could I ask how many of you attended those? Look at all the hands. Now I'm going to ask those who spoke at Cultural Conversations to stand up. Both Robert and Richard, and Diana's here. Oh, Diana, you should be in front. Really led the way and built the road for us to be able to walk tonight, the TEDx path. And I wanted to thank the audience, absolutely, for being here. I know you had to go through loops just to get here with our Eventbrite and invitations and such. And the TEDx speakers who are back there in the green room, and their families. Our student ushers from the Honors Academy, Thank you so much. Our tech and super design specialists, our journalists, our video specialists, our photographers, Elamine, Rashad, Eric, I love the blocks. That was a total surprise. Eric surprised me, I had no idea. Eric Sanchez, industrial artist. John and Barbara, our LMC experience here tonight, faculty managers, our vice president, and he's not going to like it, I asked him to stand. Do you mind? Kevin, is Kevin here? Ah, well, he's watching us. Hi, Kevin. Thank you. And we have one, if not two, of our trustees from the Contra Costa Community College District, who is also a previous student and has been to every one of our events, and that is Trustee Gary Walker Roberts. And if Scott is here, and Josh, I want to thank you both as our colleagues for helping us make this event wonderful. So in a few minutes here, Maria is going to talk more about our speakers, but Ted has asked us to show you a quick video, a short little interlude that introduces the concept of TED. Thank you.
Kenya to Colombia, from Iraq to Korea, in slums, in schools, in prisons, and in theatres. Every day, people gather at TEDx events around the world to hear the best ideas bubbling up in their communities. Today, you are part of a global conversation about our shared future. So what is this TEDx? TEDx is an initiative of the TED Conference, a non-profit devoted to ideas worth spreading. We grant free licenses to allow TED-like events to spread globally. This event today is based on the TED Conference format and ideals, but is independently organized by your local community. So please make sure to thank the team of volunteers who worked so hard on today's event. It's their ideas, dedication, and time that made it all possible. It's they who booked all the speakers, and the views you'll hear today are, of course, those of those speakers, not necessarily of TEDs. But we hope their talks spark an exciting conversation among you. This is a day for curiosity and for skepticism, for openness and for critical thinking, for inspiration and for action. The more you enter into it, the more you'll take out. And now, on with the show.
Awesome, we're so excited that you're all here. I will not take up very much of your time because I know you, like myself and Lori, are very excited to hear from our speakers. As Lori mentioned, this has been a true labor of love for the two of us, but we couldn't have done it without an amazing support staff. And our support staff here at the college is phenomenal. Some of you have worked with our faculty, our staff, and our administration and can attest to how supportive they truly are of innovative ideas. As has been mentioned, we could not have done this without the LMC Innovation Grant. It was amazing that the college saw so much potential in not just our idea, but other faculty and staff's innovative thoughts, projects, and designs, and supported us. So we are truly grateful to the Innovation Grant for that. We also have to thank the entire village of our media and marketing departments, Eloine, John, Rashad, Eric, and Barbara. What would we have done without you? I don't think we could have done this without you. And then of course, President Cradaville, Vice President Horan, all of our deans have been phenomenal. And then I have to personally thank three of my colleagues, Professor Scott Hubbard, Professor Josh Bearden, and Professor Star Steers, who have been helping be our right and left hand the day of. Of course, all of my amazing honors students who volunteer to be ushers and man the registration tables, or I should say man/woman the registration tables, because we don't want to use gendered language. And of course, my awesome debaters who will be the student introducers for each of our 8 speakers. So we have 8 fabulous speakers for you this evening. We also will be showing 2 different TED Talks in between, so as those speeches are playing, if that's when you wanted to use your restroom break, because I know if you're anything like me, when it's live speakers, you don't want to miss something, those videos would be a great opportunity for that. So we want to make sure you have your phones silenced, and we do need to say that there should be no audio or video recording during the presentations. We have a videographer here and a formal photographer, so we will have all of those captured for you. All right, without further ado, one last thank you to my good friend Lori for her help, and let's bring on the speakers. TEDx Event.
Hello everyone. Our first speaker tonight is going to be Nilton Serva, presenting How Entrepreneurship Saved My Life.
Entrepreneurship saved my life. For me to say that, I must have been in some kind of danger, right? Well, let's go back 2 years from now. I was on house arrest, a few days away from my probation violations that I had got, so I had to go to court. And what I had not noticed is that because of that, it was putting me into a bad position. Now let's go back 1 more year. I was in a cell at the Martinez Juvenile Hall, waiting to get sentenced for my 1st-degree residential burglary charge. Luckily, I was blessed with a public defender and judge that saw great potential in me. And later, my charge was dropped from a 1st degree to a 2nd degree charge. Either way, it was very difficult for me, but it was even more difficult for my family, because they had to experience this, and I didn't know how to deal with it myself. And one thing that came about from all of this was that my family got to understand that I had issues, and so that I had to fix it, and that I had to keep pushing forward. And one big thing I noticed from all of this was that incarceration was leading me somewhere that I didn't expect to get. The biggest thing I got from it was that entrepreneurship was meant for me. But it took me a while to get there. So what I had focused on when going through entrepreneurship was the process. So during my incarceration, I spent a lot of time reading. I read a book. Sorry. It's not working. Yeah, it's not working. So, I read a book, and it was called Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. This book opened up my mind to think differently and understand business. Little did I know that this was the beginning of when I would focus on entrepreneurship. And from this day, I read every business and personal development book in the facility. A book I read that really made me think that I can be an entrepreneur, and a successful one, was a book called Nothing to Lose, Everything to Gain by Ryan Blair. And he was incarcerated as a teen, but the thing is that he became a success. And when I heard about that story, I wanted to be like him. And I knew that there was opportunity for me to do so. So I focused on actively finding the mentorship and the education that I would get. So I started a company called Serva Media. With my brother's help, we formulated a plan to really push forward this company that would change the way we produce and market media. And the way I've noticed is that there is a huge problem in media, that we are producing content that is not correlating with the way we want to drive the engagement. We are a full-service digital media company that focuses on providing services that is cross-cultural, immersive, because we think that the content that's created is supposed to engage, not just be created for nothing. So through my incarceration, I was able to notice that all these little things were happening to me to lead me to something great like this. All the books I read, everything I was doing while I was incarcerated was preparing me for such a task that I thought was impossible. And the reason I got here were because of two things: my work ethic and my now strong support system. See, it was really hard for someone like me to get to a place like this, because I come from a family of 5, and we were really poor. My mother only made about $6,000 a year, but I didn't care because I loved her so much because she put me through school and everything she had to do. But I was still unsatisfied. I was very materialistic, and I didn't see the outlet that I was looking for to release my stress and frustration. So I would consume drugs and alcohol to feel like I was escaping someplace and I could actually be somewhere I belonged, which is why I was drawn to the streets. You know, I learned a lot of things when I was on the streets, and a lot of things that I still love about it. The hustle, the grind, and the mindset. Those 3 things prepared me, but I didn't know that it would prepare me to be an entrepreneur. And it just blew my mind that the correlation between those 2. So one thing we're trying to do new with Serva Media is that we're trying to integrate VR, AR, and AI into our line of services, but create new lines of services that are around this type of technology, but also around the collection and access of data. And that's something we are trying to focus on because it's the future of media. Now, since TED is about spreading new ideas, and the future of everything is happening here, I want to tell you all about the future of Serva Media. So one thing we're trying to do here is that we're trying to start something that's based off of one problem I learned not too long ago, that digital agencies and digital publishers are having a huge battle. This push and shove is causing a lot of commotion with the media and what we are doing today. So we plan to take on the publisher side and become a hybrid company. What I mean by this is that we will be a hybrid of a digital agency and a digital publisher. So that means we're going to be creating different media channels, but also different consumable channels that we can produce on a platform like Serva TV. So this is something that we want people to be able to access, to get the news that they want in different areas. And this is something that we really think is needed in media. And if it's kind of complicated for you to understand this, think of the Vices and BuzzFeeds combined with a company like VaynerMedia, which is a digital agency. Those are the CEOs and they're visionaries for these 2 forms of media. And we want it to be a hybrid. Now, the thing about these type of companies is that you need a team. These are my brothers. We have started a team, and we're beginning to grow. We see a future in media, in entrepreneurship, in the way we, actively push on this whole movement of serious entrepreneurs. I'm really focused now because of what had happened to me. I understand that there's these issues with youth and entrepreneurship and getting them involved. And although those are my 2 older brothers, I've been able to teach them so much, but I've also been able to learn so much. And that's why I really focus on pushing the entrepreneurship that we want to start, which is a movement called SERVA. SERVA is a movement for serious entrepreneurs that want to create services or products to further push advancements. Like, we want these entrepreneurs to be seriously active in this. There's always issues that are happening that can be solved through a business, through a form of company. We just need to gather these people together. And that's why I say it's a movement. Sometimes it's hard to understand this, but entrepreneurship is very difficult and very lonely. I'm always not like, I sit down at my desk and I do the work I must do. And the same goes for my brothers. But I have to get the work done. So I can't go out. I can't do the things that most people my age do. I've lost a very close friend of mine last year. He was a big brother to me. His name is Antonio Batiste. He believed in me even when I almost didn't believe in myself. He told me things that I never would forget, like, you're going to be successful. He would even say, you're going to be rich one day. And I told him, we're going to be rich. It's just the thing that we had, that bond. So I really focused on being a success. And I know he's watching me now as I speak, and I know he's proud of me, even though he's gone. And if he was alive today, he would keep pushing me to my limits. One thing I've noticed after all of this, even getting from here, from incarceration, to being poor, to being a drug and alcohol user, I've learned that I have my own issues. And that sometimes I'm not perfect, like today. I know that I make mistakes, but I hope that people will learn from it. And people will learn from everything that we're doing as a business and as human beings. So aside all this, if I didn't go through the process that I went through with incarceration and everything, I wouldn't have been here to tell you all how entrepreneurship saved my life. Thank you.
Hello, our next speaker is Hana Siddiqui with her speech entitled, How My Food Allergies Destroyed My Body and Then Healed It.
Hello. How many of you pay attention to what you eat? And I mean, really pay attention. You scour food labels, inspect every ingredient, and are picky with the types of products that you buy. I would venture to guess not many of you do. If you had asked me this question 4 years ago, I would have laughed. In fact, I would have gone as far as to say that people who did do those things were absolutely crazy. Growing up, I ate pretty much everything without a care in the world. Thought that eating healthy was stupid, and getting the recommended amounts of fruits and veggies every day was impractical and unlikely. I'd been active all my life as a ballet dancer and black belt, and assumed that my active lifestyle made up for my lack of nutrients. From chicken nuggets to pizza to ice cream, nothing was off limits for me, and I couldn't imagine a world where people didn't eat these things. My journey to a healthier world began when I was 13 years old and adopted vegetarianism. My high school best friend was a devout vegetarian, and after hearing her speak of the dangers of eating meat and the unethical impact it had on our planet, I decided to give it a go. But even vegetarianism couldn't quite convince me to eat vegetables. Instead of the typical salad-munching, kale smoothie-drinking vegetarian, I was more what I like to call the grilled cheese and french fry vegetarian. Although I did see some benefits from not eating meat, such as more energy and weight loss, I was nowhere near the textbook definition of a healthy eater. Little did I know that would all change. When I was 16 years old, I developed a slew of severe food allergies seemingly out of nowhere. Suddenly, Gluten, dairy, corn, eggs, lemons, hemp, and asparagus had to be removed from my diet, which meant no pizza, no ice cream, and certainly no grilled cheese. I found myself caught in a tailspin. All the things I grew up eating were no longer suitable for my body. Every time I ate a piece of bread, my stomach would swell up like a balloon and hurt for days on end. When I would eat cheese and other dairy products, I would feel fatigued and bloated and be unable to perform as well as I knew I could in my dance classes. I want you to take a moment and close your eyes. Imagine the worst stomach pain you've ever felt. Imagine your stomach tight and hard as a rock. You can hear your insides churning and bubbling, and you feel like you're going to collapse. Now imagine that same feeling, but while running, jumping, and twirling about a small room for hours on end. It isn't a very pleasant feeling. You can open your eyes now. From the stomach pain and swelling to sore throats and incessant vomiting, I could feel my body growing weaker and weaker from my current ways of eating, and knew that a serious lifestyle change was in order. My mom, who had developed these same allergies just a few months prior, suggested that I adopt an organic vegan diet. Desperate for change, I jumped right in and made the transition overnight. But with this new lifestyle came a lot of research, and it wasn't until I began to live as a vegan that I truly understood how much I didn't know about where our food comes from. Documentaries such as Food Inc. by Robert Kenner and Forks Over Knives by Gene Stone became important allies in my journey and opened me up to a world of information. But perhaps the most striking was Cowspiracy, a 2014 AUM Films documentary by filmmakers Kip Anderson and Keegan Kuhn about the health and environmental implications of the meat and dairy industry. According to Dr. Michael Kapler, a physician featured in the film, there is nothing in cow's milk required by human beings, and many things in it that we are better off not consuming, such as residues of antibiotics, pesticides, and cow pus. Take a moment to think about that. Your mac and cheese, your milkshakes, even your morning lattes could be filled with the cow's pus and other excrements. When I discovered this fact, something in me clicked. No wonder my body was no longer able to tolerate milk. Our bodies are not designed to ingest animal pus and pesticides. Even the thought of that is completely revolting. Nor are they designed to ingest processed meats like bacon and sausage, which, according to the World Health Organization, are carcinogenic to human beings. Back to the dairy for a moment. If consuming cow pus wasn't enough, Cowspiracy goes on to state that over 1,000 gallons of water are used to produce 1 gallon of milk. That fact blew my mind. For every 1 gallon jug of milk you see in the grocery store, it took over 1,000 gallons of water to create it. Not only does this apply to milk and dairy products, but to eggs and meat too. For every 1 pound of eggs produced, it took 477 gallons of water to create it. And for every 1 pound of beef produced, it took 2,500 gallons of water to create it. Let that sink in for a moment. There is so much water going towards the production of animal products. No wonder we experience things like droughts and dry spells. At the time, everyone around me was talking about the drought in California, but while they attributed it to a lack of rainfall, I began to think it was something else. With a little research, I found out that California is, in fact, the largest supplier of beef and dairy in the United States, churning out about 38.39 billion pounds of milk annually, according to SeeCalifornia.com. Suddenly, a lack of rainfall didn't seem to be the problem after all. According to their estimates, and the estimates given in Cowspiracy, approximately 39 trillion gallons of water are used every single year just to produce the amount of milk sold annually in the state of California. And that is just California. That 39 trillion doesn't even begin to cover the other 49 states and US territories, nor the other 195 countries that exist around the globe today. This was a turning point for me, and a moment when I realized that this was about more than just my health. While my journey into veganism may have started out as a way to protect my body from harmful allergens, it quickly morphed into a desire to protect the planet as well. As I continued my research, I learned from Cowspiracy that cows produce 150 billion gallons of methane every single day, and that 1 molecule of methane is equal to 23 molecules of carbon dioxide. It has 86 times the global warming potential that carbon dioxide does. I learned from One Green Planet, an environmental organization, that over 70% of the Amazon rainforest has been cleared to make room for cows, and that nearly half of the land in the United States is used only for animal agriculture. Not only that, but they also claim that if the United States only gave up all beef, pork, and poultry in the United States, we would be able to feed an additional 1.4 billion people. And, going by the estimate provided by the World Hunger Education Services, that over 795 million people worldwide are starving, we would be able to feed all the hungry people in the world 1.8 times over, just by giving up meat in the United States. If we could give up our bacon, our steaks, and our hamburgers, we could see a total end to world hunger in our lifetimes. Think about that for a moment. While my journey into this lifestyle may have started out as a concern for my personal health issues, I quickly realized it was becoming so much more. I soon realized that my health was only one small dot on the map of all the health, environmental, and humanitarian issues posed by animal agriculture and the current state of the American food industry. So with all of this said, what can we do? As everyday people, what can we do to help revolutionize the future of the food industry and create sustainable, healthier futures for ourselves? I have two different ideas. The first is through education. While I threw a lot of information at you all today, this is only the tip of the iceberg, and there is so much more out there to know. Start by asking questions. Where is my food coming from? What does it take to get from the farm to my plate? Is there a healthier option? Don't be afraid to question everything, and don't be afraid to share your knowledge with others. I believe that proper nutritional education is key to creating a fundamental difference within the food industry, whether it be on a local or on a global scale. The second way I believe we can make a difference is by, unsurprisingly, implementing a plant-based diet. Whether that means adopting meatless Mondays or going fully vegan, by doing even the smallest amount, you can have a significant impact on the planet and on your health. I believe that a plant-based diet is the key to revolutionizing the future of the food industry. It is our way to ensure we prevent our bodies from the deadly diseases that run rampant in the United States, such as cancer and heart disease, and reverse environmental conditions, such as global warming. Not only that, by implementing a plant-based diet now, you can prevent yourself from developing food allergies just like mine. And while I, of course, wish that I could have prevented mine, ultimately, I'm thankful for them, as they led me to be here with you all today. So with that said, if there's one thing you take away from today, let it be this. The future of the environment, the future of your health, and the future of food is in your hands. You have the power to create a revolution. Let that power be used for good. Thank you.
Please welcome our next speaker, Dale Satchery, speaking on the topic of the future of U.S. strategy on China. Thank you.
International relations as a subject has always intrigued me as a person. To me, it's like studying a bunch of polyamorous relationships and love triangles, but between countries instead of people. I saw this problem coming when I first studied international relations in Model UN in high school, and later as an intelligence analyst with 4 assignments to Asia. The current problem in international relations is that there is currently a clash of values between the current international system led by the United States since World War II, and a new one that is up and coming, which is led by China. To understand the fear that we have in this coming clash, I want us to take a step back to 431 BC. Athens and Sparta are locked in a deadly war, and Athens is commanded by a Greek general named Thucydides, and he later wrote the book on the Peloponnesian War. He wrote one line in his book: "What made war inevitable was the rise of Athenian power and the fear which is instilled in Sparta." So this inspired the Thucydides project at Harvard Kennedy School of Government. Professor Graham Allison of the Harvard Kennedy School of Government coined the term Thucydides' trap and elaborated more on it in his book, Destined for War. Can American China escape Thucydides' trap? He analyzed 16 cases in the past 500 years where an upcoming power threatened to displace a major ruling one. And of those 16 cases, 12 resulted in war. So the current question that we face right now in international relations is if America and China are destined for the same fate. The current president of China, Xi Jinping, has made grand plans for his country. He's just recently consolidated all his power in the Chinese Communist Party and has installed his yes men into the Chinese Communist Party so that he may outroll his plan without much opposition. Part of his strategy, well actually a major part of his strategy, is dependent on the military. China is expanding its military at a ferocious pace. They are expanding their ability to fight high-intensity conflicts farther from the Chinese mainland, and to do it with greater logistical capability. China is also expanding its outward bases, particularly in Africa, specifically in the country of Djibouti. But most importantly, China right now is expanding into the South China Sea. They're creating artificial islands and bases and harassing international ships and even some United States Navy ships in the area. China's economy is also something to keep a watch on. They're set to overtake us by 2030 if current linear trends continue. And by 2050, China wants to see itself as the world leader in research and development. They are sinking many billions of dollars into research and development, and they currently represent 20% of all the money in the world that is spent on innovation. So by that measure, they are definitely set to overtake us in innovation and research and development. But also, we have to realize that China is not invincible. The primary concern right now for China is all the debt they have racked up, just like another government that we all know. Right now, their collective debt is at 3 times their GDP, and this is what many economists fear will derail our recovery from the Great Recession of 2008. China's economy may be big, but it depends on a collection of local economies inside China, and many of those local economies are currently struggling with debt that they have been saddling with. Also, 1 in 3 Chinese banks are failing to create economic value, so that may set China up for trouble later down the road. China has just recently become the largest net importer of United States oil, ironically. But at the end of the day, we have to remember, China's 1.3 billion people is almost 4 times as much as the United States' 311 million people. All each Chinese citizen has to do is be 1/4 as productive as each American citizen in order to overtake the United States. And why would they just stop at 1/4? We had hoped that after World War II, China would become an advanced liberal democracy, just like Japan and Germany, and follow in the footsteps of globalization and be a more democratic society. But we were very naive in that thinking. We had tried to apply Western values to a country that obviously has its own values and philosophy. Americans like to think of themselves as the American experiment, since we have been around for only approximately 250 years. And we think of our strategy in terms of sections of 4 to 8 years. China, by contrast, thinks of itself as a fixture of the universe, always has been and always will be, since 5 millennia ago. So they clearly outthink us in the strategy game as well. China does not want a kinetic war with the United States. That would be very costly for both sides, but it does see itself as the dominating power in Asia. And President Xi is committed to reducing third-party influence in Asia. And by third party, I mean our own, unfortunately. China is a stakeholder in the international system. It's a member of almost every international body, from the United Nations to the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. But it can be described as a dissatisfied stakeholder, since it's not at the top. In fact, they have been trying to create their own universe to compete with the United States. An example I'll give is that in 2012, China created the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, or the AIIN, to counter the United States-led World Bank and try and get financial footing in Asia. The United States in the diplomatic circles rallied against this because that would take away from our own influence in the region. But embarrassingly, close allies such as South Korea, Japan, Germany, Israel, and even our best friend the UK joined China's bank. So this isolated ourselves instead of Beijing, and it proved that our diplomatic calculus clearly needed some work. What is concerning us right now in intelligence is the expansion in the South China Sea. I fear that once China gets to control the South China Sea with its artificial islands and its logistical supply point, it will be able to coerce the rest of Asia into going along with China. And if the United States fails to stop this outward expansion, it will set horrible precedents for our credibility in the region, and it will definitely just allow China to take the reins in Asia. So clearly, a strategy to counter China will have to start with the South China Sea. Our lack of a comprehensive strategy in Asia is what has allowed China to capitalize on this expansion. And to stop Chinese expansion, we have to leverage our own international institutions and our own allies in the region to first stop the expansion into the South China Sea, and then later to keep China contained in Asia. We have to keep on increasing our presence in countries such as South Korea, Japan, and Vietnam to be the counterbalance against Chinese expansion in Asia and also in the world. We also should bring back, in cohesion with the strategy, we should also bring back a modified Cold War style of containment, but have it be less blatant. Because at the end of the day, it's the same game. My closing thoughts on this is that we have to come up with a comprehensive strategy if we are going to deal with a nation that is up and coming in power. We have to make it clear that this expansion and harassment of international vessels and international relations in the South China Sea and other parts of Asia cannot be tolerated. My closing thoughts on this is that the United States is still number one, but we have to contend with no longer being the sole superpower in the world. And we also have to realize that we may have to contend with an economy bigger than ours. But at the end of the day, if we can still innovate and we can still work. So we should be grateful for that. Appeasement and being proficient on the defense cannot be a strategy. And future citizens of the United States will have to ask themselves if they're willing to continue to be the global policeman, or if they're willing to see a world where the United States is no longer number one. Thank you.
All right, so far we have had 3 fabulous speakers, and next up for your viewing pleasure, we have one of our videos from the TED.com website, which we're showing you through YouTube since it's their official YouTube channel. Lisa Nim is going to talk with you all about how humans could evolve to survive in space. And following her video, you'll be hearing back from our live speakers. Thank you, and now we have Lisa's video. After these messages.
So there are lands few and far between on Earth itself that are hospitable to humans by any measure. But survive we have. Our primitive ancestors, when they found their homes and livelihood endangered, they dared to make their way into unfamiliar territories in search of better opportunities. And as the descendants of these explorers, we have their nomadic blood coursing through our own veins. But at the same time, distracted by our bread and circuses and embroiled in the wars that we have waged on each other, it seems that we have forgotten this desire to explore. We, as a species, were evolved uniquely for Earth, on Earth, and by Earth. And so content are we with our living conditions that we have grown complacent and just too busy to notice that its resources are finite, and that our sun's life is also finite. While Mars and all the movies made in its name have reinvigorated the ethos for space travel, few of us seem to truly realize that our species' fragile constitution is woefully unprepared for long-duration journeys into space. Let us make a trek to your local national forest for a quick reality check. So just a quick show of hands here. How many of you think you would be able to survive in this lush wilderness for a few days? Well, that's a lot of you. How about a few weeks? A decent amount. How about a few months? That's pretty good too. So now let's imagine that this local national forest experiences an eternal winter. Same questions. How many of you think you would be able to survive for a few days? That's quite a lot. How about a few weeks? So, for a fun twist, let us imagine that the only source of water available is trapped as frozen blocks, miles below the surface. Soil nutrients are so minimal that no vegetation can be found. And, of course, hardly any atmosphere exists to speak of. Such examples are only a few of the many challenges we would face on a planet like Mars. So how do we steel ourselves for voyages whose destinations are so far removed from tropical vacation? Will we continuously ship supplies from planet Earth? Build space elevators? Or impossible miles of transport belts that tether your planet of choice to our home planet? And how do we grow things like food that grew up on Earth, like us? But I'm getting ahead of myself. In our species' journey to find a new home under a new sun, we are, more likely than not, going to be spending much time in the journey itself. In space, on a ship, a hermetic flying can, possibly for many generations. The longest continuous amount of time that any human has spent in space is in the vicinity of 12 to 14 months. From astronauts' experiences in space, we know that spending time in a microgravity environment means bone loss, muscle atrophy, cardiovascular problems, among many other complications that range from the physiological to the psychological. And what about macrogravity, or any other variation in gravitational pull of the planet that we find ourselves on? In short, our cosmic voyages will be fraught with dangers both known and unknown. So far, we've been looking to this new piece of mechanical technology or that great next generation robot as part of a lineup to ensure our species' safe passage in space. Wonderful as they are, I believe the time has come for us to complement these bulky electronic giants with what nature has already invented: the microbe. A single-celled organism that is itself a self-generating, self-replenishing, living machine. It requires fairly little to maintain, offers much flexibility in design, and only asks to be carried in a single plastic tube. The field of study that has enabled us to utilize the capabilities of the microbe is known as synthetic biology. It comes from molecular biology, which has given us antibiotics, vaccines, and better ways to observe the physiological nuances of the human body. Using the tools of synthetic biology, we can now edit the genes of nearly any organism, microscopic or not, with incredible speed and fidelity. Given the limitations of our man-made machines, synthetic biology will be a means for us to engineer not only our food, our fuel, and our environment, but also ourselves to compensate for our physical inadequacies and to ensure our survival in space. To give you an example of how we can use synthetic biology for space exploration, let us return to the Mars environment. The Martian soil composition is similar to that of Hawaiian volcanic ash, with trace amounts of organic material. Let's say, hypothetically, what if Martian soil could actually support plant growth without using Earth-derived nutrients? The first question we should probably ask is, how will we make our plants cold tolerant? Because on average, the temperature on Mars is a very uninviting negative 60 degrees centigrade. The next question we should ask is, how do we make our plants drought tolerant? Considering that most of the water that forms as frost evaporates more quickly than I can say the word evaporate. Well, it turns out we've already done things like this. By borrowing genes for antifreeze protein from fish, and genes for drought tolerance from other plants like rice, and then stitching them into the plants that need them, we now have plants that can tolerate most droughts and freezes. They're known on Earth as GMOs, or genetically modified organisms. And we rely on them to feed all the mouths of human civilization. Nature does stuff like this already, without our help. We have simply found more precise ways to do it. So why would we want to change the genetic makeup of plants for space? Well, to not do so would mean needing to engineer endless acres of land on an entirely new planet by releasing trillions of gallons of atmospheric gases, and then constructing a giant glass dome to contain it all. It's an unrealistic engineering enterprise that quickly becomes a high-cost cargo transport mission. One of the best ways to ensure that we will have the food supplies and the air that we need is to bring with us organisms that have been engineered to adapt to new and harsh environments. In essence, using engineered organisms to help us terraform the planet both in the short and long term. These organisms can then also be engineered to make medicine or fuel. So we can use synthetic biology to bring highly engineered plants with us, but what else can we do? Well, I mentioned earlier that we as a species were evolved uniquely for planet Earth. That fact has not changed much in the last 5 minutes that you were sitting here and I was standing there. And so if we were to dump any of us on Mars right this minute, even given ample food, water, air, and a suit, we are likely to experience very unpleasant health problems from the amount of ionizing radiation that bombards the surface of planets like Mars that have little or non-existent atmosphere. Unless we plan to stay holed up underground for the duration of our stay on every new planet, we must find better ways of protecting ourselves without needing to resort to wearing a suit of armor that weighs something equal to your own body weight, or needing to hide behind a wall of lead. So let us appeal to nature for inspiration.
Among the plethora of life here on Earth, there's a subset of organisms known as extremophiles, or lovers of extreme living conditions, if you'll remember from high school biology. And among these organisms is a bacterium by the name of Deinococcus radiodermans. It is known to be able to withstand cold, dehydration, vacuum, acid, and most notably, radiation. While its radiation tolerance mechanisms are known, we have yet to adapt the relevant genes to mammals. To do so is not particularly easy. There are many facets that go into its radiation tolerance, and it's not as simple as transferring one gene. But given a little bit of human ingenuity and a little bit of time, I think to do so is not very hard either. Even if we borrow just a fraction of its ability to tolerate radiation, it would be infinitely better than what we already have, which is just the melanin in our skin. Using the tools of synthetic biology, we can harness Deinococcus radiodermans' ability to thrive under otherwise very lethal doses of radiation. As difficult as it is to see, Homo sapiens, that's humans, evolves every day and still continues to evolve. Thousands of years of human evolution has not only given us humans like Tibetans, who can thrive in low oxygen conditions, but also Argentinians, who can ingest and metabolize arsenic, the chemical element that can kill the average human being. Every day, the human body evolves by accidental mutations that equally accidentally allow certain humans to persevere in dismal situations. But, and this is a big but, such evolution requires two things that we may not always have or be able to afford, and they are death and time. In our species' struggle to find our place in the universe, we may not always have the time necessary for the natural evolution of extra functions for survival on non-Earth planets. We're living in what E.O. Wilson has termed the age of gene circumvention, during which we remedy our genetic defects like cystic fibrosis or muscular dystrophy with temporary external supplements. But with every passing day, we approach the age of volitional evolution, a time during which we as a species will have the capacity to decide for ourselves our own genetic destiny. Augmenting the human body with new abilities is no longer a question of how, but of when. Using synthetic biology to change the genetic makeup of any living organisms, especially our own, is not without its moral and ethical quandaries. Will engineering ourselves make us less human? But then again, what is humanity but star stuff that happens to be conscious? Where should human genius direct itself? Surely it is a bit of a waste to simply sit back and marvel at it. How do we use our knowledge to protect ourselves from the external dangers?
And then protect ourselves from ourselves. I pose these questions not to engender the fear of science, but to bring to light the many possibilities that science has afforded and continues to afford us. We must coalesce as humans to discuss and embrace the solutions, not only with caution, but also with courage. Mars is a destination, but it will not be our last. Our true final frontier is the line we must cross in deciding what we can and should make of our species' improbable intelligence. Space is cold, brutal, and unforgiving. Our path to the stars will be rife with trials that will bring us to question not only who we are, but where we will be going. The answers will lie in our choice to use or abandon the technology that we have gleaned from life itself, and it will define us for the remainder of our term in this universe. Thank you.
All right, so hopefully you all enjoyed Lisa Knipp's speech about how humans could evolve to survive in space. It definitely fit in well with our theme, the future of everything. I love when exciting music comes in. It's a good thing I'm a speech professor. Just know how to adapt. And we are going to bring back to the stage our live TEDx Los Padonis College speaker. So if you're coming in, grab your seats, hurry, hurry. I want to make sure you don't miss our next speaker, who will be introduced in just a second.
Introducing our next speaker, Dan Beaver, on his topic, which is maintaining an intimate connection in an age of online communication. Thank you.
Thank you. As you all know, everywhere you go, you see screens. Smartphones, iPads, laptops, everybody's staring at their screens and preoccupied with them. They invade all our spaces. They invade waiting rooms. They invade restaurants. They're everywhere we go. There we go. Some people try to put limits on them, like in my classrooms here. I say, no screens, pay attention, but I feel like it's a losing battle because they're sneaking around with their phones and, hey, what's that, and they think that they can do that and still understand what I'm talking about. I think that's a belief, and I don't think multitasking is really effective. Some people are staring at them and it's dangerous to walk down the street, and definitely lethal behind the wheel. That's not good at all. So, this is a new normal. This isn't going to go away, these type of communication devices. And they're going to be in the future as well. So I think we have to accept it and look at how we can deal with it, which is what I'll try to do tonight. People are avoiding real contact. That's the problem. They're face to face. They're not wanting to talk. People text all the time, and that is the worst form of communication if you want to have any intimate connection. It's good to say, pick up some milk, or logistical things. Emails aren't much better. People misinterpret those all the time. And what we need today are really effective forms of communication at this level, because we don't have a lot of time. The amount of time we have to connect with a person is so condensed that it requires very high-speed, effective communication. And those devices and the ways that we do it are not really effective. It's like if we went back to 56K modem dial-up. Remember that? What if we went back to that? Everybody go nuts. It's, it's crazy. what we end up with that kind of communication is what I call data share. It's just information, but what's missing is emotion. It's just content. And in order to have an intimate connection with somebody, children, lover, spouse, you need emotional connection. And that's where we're going somewhere with that, but it's not good. I mean, if you've seen this, I mean, you've seen this picture. I mean, I've seen that a lot. You know, there's no connection there. Just looking at, talking to other people. Seeing that work to go. So we have a major disconnect. And people end up feeling like roommates if they're in a relationship instead of lovers. And that creates a lot of pain and alienation and loneliness, and it's very unfulfilling. So I can go on and on about the problem, which I don't like doing so much because I'm in the business of helping people have a better relationship, whether it's lecturing at the school or in clinical practice. So I'd rather talk about that, if you don't mind. Okay? The topics. Oh, by the way, there was another screen that has been part of my career before all these technical devices. It was called television. Remember television? Well, television's still around, but people, you know, would get distracted and look at television instead of interacting with their significant other. I used to call television the opiate of suburbia. You know, they just get thrown behind it and not real any connection, and they don't even know what's on. I don't know. Just start from here. But now, with the screens that we have, we can take television, in a sense, everywhere we go. On the little screen, people watching and stuff, they're not paying attention to each other and disconnected. So let's talk about some good stuff. All right. The first thing I want to make a point about is let's differentiate emotion from thought. Because I ask people all day at work, how did that make you feel? How did you feel when she did that? Well, I feel it was totally inappropriate. No, that's what you think. How do you feel? Well, I feel she shouldn't have done it. No, that's what you think again. How do you feel? Well, it pisses me off. It makes me angry. Okay, emotion, finally, 3 questions later. So when we're talking about emotion, the best way to think about it is one-word descriptors. Hurt, sad, guilty, anxious, pleasure, joy, fear, anxiety. I mean, that's the language that I'm talking about. Now, what makes emotion so important in a relationship, if I'm looking at a couple sitting in front of me, I'm like looking at arteries between them, metaphorically. And you know what flows in those arteries? Keep that relationship alive is emotion. That's the blood of a marriage. That's the blood, that's the life force that keeps it going. And when I see people, their arteries are all clogged up. That flow didn't happen too much. And one of my agendas is kind of an emotional angioplast, cleaning it out. And then keeping it going. So make sure you're talking emotion and not thought. Another thing that people do that's really blocks that connection is that they tell the other person that they shouldn't feel what they feel. What are you getting upset about? It's not that big of a deal. If you looked at it more rationally and logically, you'd see there's no reason to get upset. And you know what? No one else is upset. Why are you getting upset? So why don't you just kick back and relax and we'll have a good time? Anybody hear stuff like that? You hear the message in that? The message is you shouldn't feel what you feel. If you tell a lover or someone close to you that they shouldn't feel what they feel, they're going to stop opening up to you. That's like taking a knife and just cutting those arteries. Go from lovers to roommates really quick. And most people don't realize that. They just do it. So whatever your lover, spouse, child feels emotionally is a fact. It's not debatable. Okay? It's not debatable. It's a given. I don't care if you understand it, like it, feel the same way, doesn't matter. It's a physiological reality for that person. All day, you know what I heard all day today? What are you getting nervous about, Dan? You've done lots of talks. You lecture all the time. I don't know. I'm nervous, okay? Let me be nervous. I know you care, but I'm nervous, all right? So let's just get over that. So give validity to the person's emotions. That's the point, okay? Another thing that we do is in our culture, which I don't understand, is that we like to judge emotions. There's actually 2 lists. Negative and positive. There are negative emotions, positive emotions. good emotion or bad emotion, constructive or destructive. So what happens if you happen to have an emotion that you consider negative? What are you going to do with it? What do you think your tendency is going to be? I'll answer for you. It's not a classroom. Critical thinking. Okay? You want to get rid of it. Who wants negative? Get that out of here. So where does it go? Those negative emotions just dissipate out into the atmosphere? No, they sit there. You know where they go? They go in those arteries I was talking about earlier. That's the cholesterol of the arteries, what people call negative feelings. Resentment, anger, hurt, disappointment, frustration, fear. Those are all bad. Get those out of here. But you know what happens? If you can't express those so-called negatives, you end up expressing very little of anything. You end up flatlining. Boring, no passion, no excitement, no turn on. Now, you know, my grandmother used to tell me, now Dan, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it. How many of you heard that line? See, that is so dysfunctional. If she was alive, boy, I'd tell her all about it. Because what that's implying is I can't tell you anger, hurt, fear, joy, or resentment, all negatives, but I can tell you how warm and loving and caring I feel. The reality is you can't say the so-called negatives, you end up sharing nothing, very little. Now Thanksgiving and Christmas, okay, I can keep my mouth shut for the day, everything's nice, it's nice seeing everybody, yeah. I don't have to get intimate with relatives I see once a year. But with a lover 24/7, all emotion is good. That's the point. Okay? This thing is not working. All emotion is good. I don't know any negative feelings. They're not all pleasant though. I don't like pain. But pain is a definite call to action. Get you motivated. What's the #1 negative emotion in America? Anger. Got an anger problem. You need anger management. You need to control your anger. There's nothing negative about anger. It's a great emotion. I use it a lot in my work. It produces. It's a motivator. It's a motivator. Now, how an emotion gets expressed is a different topic, which we don't have time to talk about. That's the delivery part. First emotion, anger, and then you have its delivery. Well, that's a different subject, because there are obviously awful ways to express anger, okay? But the anger in itself is good. And there are, you know, positive ways to do it. Okay? So it looks like I ran out of time. Anyway, keep that in mind. Thanks for listening.
Our next presenter tonight is Haley Solares, and she will be presenting on Latinx and cultural acceptance.
Growing up, I had the privilege of living in a household with two parents from two very different cultures. My mother is a Caucasian woman from the Midwest, whereas my father is a Latino from Guatemala. Living in this environment, I saw how two cultures are able to peacefully coexist. Now, being bicultural, I see myself as a bridge connecting these two cultures. And I've had enough experience to see that both the Latinx culture and the American culture can, in fact, strive together. As Dolores Huerta, feminist, civil rights activist, and co-founder of the United Farm Workers Association once stated, we can't let people drive wedges between us because there's only one human race. Accepting one's culture is not ignoring one's culture, and it is not ignoring who someone is. Communication researcher David Kale concluded that all human beings seek to protect the dignity and worth of other people and the journey of reaching world peace. This is why cultural acceptance is vital to our world today, because in the end, all humans strive for the same thing. Today in America, we are seeing a minority majority. This meaning that minority groups are outnumbering the traditional European Americans. 57.5 million people in the United States are of the Latinx population, and it is projected that by 2050, we will make up 29% of the United States. Something that is often a misconception is that we are all recent immigrants. Well, it might be shocking to note that the average Latinx individual is born in America, and it has been this way since the year 2000. Now, as today's Latinx population is the youngest amongst the other racial and ethnic groups, we literally represent America's future. About 1/3, or 17.9 million of the nation's Hispanic population is younger than 18. And about 1/4, or 14.6 million of all Hispanics are millennials. So this is ages 18 to 33. What this means is that we have the ability to heavily influence the political, the social, and the cultural atmosphere. This is why the future is Latinx. I do realize, however, that cultural acceptance is a lot easier said than done. So what is getting in the way of us being accepting? Why should we be accepting? And how can we be accepting? First, we need to address the barrier that we face when it comes to cultural acceptance. That main barrier that we see affect our ability in being accepting of the Latinx culture is ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism is the idea that one's culture is superior to another or better than another culture. All this does is it leads us to having an us versus them relationship. Looking at us Latinx as them is a huge barrier to actually being able to form a cohesive and intricate relationships with others, because it targets us Latinx as outsiders. We cannot be culturally accepting if we are constantly listing the ways in which our culture is somehow exceptional to another, and we cannot connect with individuals if we only see how we are different. A great article titled "Ethnocentrism and Sensation Seeking as Variables That Influence Intercultural Contact-Seeking Behavior, a Path Analysis" lists a study conducted to see how intercultural communication is affected when ethnocentrism is involved. This is an article that you all should definitely check out to get more educated on ethnocentrism and how that's a barrier to cultural acceptance. So now that we know what ethnocentrism is, let's talk about the positive contributions of the Latinx culture in America, specifically when it comes to the economy and to agriculture. Latinx is changing the US economy, and looking at us as adding to the economy rather than taking away is crucial. David Hayes Bautista, Director of Latino Health and Culture at UCLA School of Medicine, calculated the total GDP, or the total economic output of the Latinx population, right here in the United States. What he found, he calls the Latino GDP, which is ranked the 7th largest GDP in the world. To put this into perspective, that is larger than India's GDP, and that is right behind the UK and France. But Latinx is also contributing to total economic growth in the US. From 2010 to 2015, the Latino GDP was responsible for 18.3% of the total economic growth. This in itself is absolutely remarkable. But it is projected that by 2020, the Latino GDP will be responsible for 24.4% of the total economic growth. So this growth and the success that we're experiencing in the economy can heavily be credited to the Latinx community. Also, this economic growth is due to the fact that there are new growing households with individuals who have growing families who are spending more in markets. Latinas in particular are the fastest growing consumers in America. Since the average age of the second generation is 28 years old, these women are at a growing stage in their life in which they have more monetary power than they did before. But what is this power that Latinas have? Well, Latinas have a $1.2 trillion in annual buying power. Because of this economic influence, we are now seeing a multicultural market here in America, in which marketing strategies are being targeted to other racial and ethnic groups, more specifically, the Latinx community. So, the future success of the economy is heavily dependent on the interconnectedness between these ethnicities working together. Although it's something that a lot of us may know, let us remember the significance of us Latinx in agriculture. Try to imagine a hypothetical world in which we didn't have these individuals cultivating the most abundant of food to today's society. To live in a world without the positive contributions of the Latinx culture, without the Latinx community, would be a world you would not want to live in. 75% of all farmers are from Mexico, and 2% are from Central American countries. Let that sink in. Now that we know how ethnocentrism is a barrier to cultural acceptance, and we know just a few of the positive contributions of the Latinx culture in America, let's talk about how we can become more culturally accepting. First, we can look at being mindful. This starts with an initial awareness. This might be uncomfortable at first, and this might be hard. But being mindful is checking yourself for unhealthy views that you have towards the Latinx culture. This is saying to yourself, I understand that this is a culture I do not know much about, or I do, and it seems very different than mine and what I am used to. I should be open-minded, and before jumping to conclusions, allow myself to be educated on the culture at hand. What this self-talk does is it allows your mind to be filled with positive enrichment, because accepting one's culture cannot be obtained if we refuse to see anything besides negative connotations. Rather, we can become more accepting through seeing the beauty in the culture and in the differences. This step is literally talking yourself into acceptance. Secondly, we can become more others-oriented. Being others-oriented means that we empathize for others, that we feel the feelings and the emotions of the individuals in the Latinx culture. Specifically, we can take into consideration how many feel right here in this country. It is fundamental to recognize that many feel privileged to have the opportunities that we have here in America, while on the other hand, many still feel marginalized and looked down upon. We can be empathetic by being attentive to those hardships in which many have gone through and are still going through to this day. Also, we can become more culturally accepting through active exposure and seeing the commonalities. Exposure is vital to understanding this culture. Without exposure, we are left with making assumptions, which allows room for stereotyping and for prejudging. Exposure can start right at home in your own community, and can be as simple as going to a local event. Latino astronaut Jose Hernandez was here on campus talking about his experience at NASA. So the events, they're here, and the culture, it's here too. You can engulf yourself in an environment that might be uncomfortable at first. Active exposure is talking with others that you know are from a different culture than you are, and establishing friendships. And these friendships should include talking about the culture, and they should include talking about the diversity. Don't be afraid. Talk with others. Experience with others. Create your own bridge. We can also look at the commonalities between these two cultures. Yes, there are differences in things such as family roles, religion, etc. But where we can find the commonality in this all is the sole fact that both cultures see these things as important. However, the biggest commonality between these cultures is the drive, the hard work, and the dedication that both cultures have to feel these concepts right here in the United States. Us Latinx want the same things that Americans want, such as social equity, quality education, strong and safe communities, economic opportunities, political security, and so much more. Because both cultures can agree that these things are in fact essential to life. So the same common goal arises. All humans seek to protect the dignity and worth of other people and the journey of reaching world peace. With this mindset, both the Latinx culture and the American culture can unify together through seeing the similarities and not ignoring the differences. You see, we can take steps to lead us in the direction of a peaceful future of accepting the Latinx culture. Let me be clear. The American culture does not have to change. However, it does have to be accepting of the Latinx culture. We can be mindful, we can be others-oriented, and we can expose ourselves to those different than we might be. Culture is so vital to our lives. It establishes a framework for the choices that we make, and it allows us to be unique individuals. When we have people who are living in this country who are not accepted because of their values or because of their beliefs, it is detrimental because it creates a separation of two people who are living so closely together. Let's learn to peacefully coexist with a population that is rapidly increasing in our own backyards. Just as I am a bridge, you too can be a bridge. The future is Latinx. The future, it is us. As Dolores Huerta would put it, sí se puede.
Please welcome our next speaker, Alamini Shola, who's going to talk to us about the future of race relations, comparing the US to Germany.
The topic for tonight, as I'm sure you're all well aware, is the future of everything. I believe the future for a peaceful America hinges on good race relations. To take a piece from one of the greatest speakers of all time, I have a dream. My dream is that there will come a point in our society where we will embrace what science already has, the fact that race doesn't actually exist. Now, that's just a pipe dream for the time being, and we're a long way away from that. That is due to a tendency in our society to glamorize our past, rationalize our atrocities, and shy away from the uncomfortable truth. My goal for tonight is through the use of scenario and comparison to help you understand why the presence of chauvinism in our society keeps our present and future dark. This is my American passport. It is an undeniable symbol of US citizenship. Now, according to a 2016 State Department survey, 54% of Americans don't even have one of these. Ironically, I wasn't born here, and I'm one of the 46% that does. My tossing my passport away like that symbolizes my willingness to have a candid conversation about America's history and its horrors, and there are many of those. And it also symbolizes my willingness to make today's comparison. Now, some of you might have already figured this out, but for those of you who haven't, tonight I will be comparing the US with Nazi Germany. Or more specifically, I will be comparing an atrocity committed by the United States with an atrocity committed by the Nazis. Now, I'm a conversationalist. Because of the fact that race is a construction created for the purposes of power banking, we need to have a serious conversation about it. Given our current climate, our current social climate, it's difficult to have a conversation about that. It's difficult because there are too many people who, and hopefully you all know the type of people that I'm talking about, are afraid of the topic. Tonight I want to take a step in the direction of fixing that. No. I hate Band-Aids, and I hate bubbles. One of those hates makes a lot more sense than the other one, because, I mean, you would think, what kind of soul do you have to hate bubbles, right? Now, part of the problem with the race relations in our modern society is that we have too many people with good intentions not understanding the actual problems. And because they lack this fundamental understanding, they end up pushing for Band-Aid solutions. An example of what I mean by Band-Aid solutions is the recent Confederate statue controversy that's taking way longer than it should to be resolved. Similar to how it takes a minute to rip off, like a grimy Band-Aid, you know what I'm talking about. Part of the problem with that is that this is the only society where an issue like that would require a discussion to fix what common sense should dictate be done from the beginning. And my topic for tonight isn't the Confederate statue controversy, so I'm not going to get into too much detail about that. Another issue that we have with regards to race in American society is that we have a lot of other people with good intentions preaching to the choir, staying within their bubble, and that doesn't help either. What we need to make a change in our society is to have those people with those good intentions pop their bubble, step outside of their comfort zones to make those changes. Now, the problem with the race in America is that it's very systematic. I will acknowledge that since the system debuted in 1776, we've made quite a few updates, but if you take nothing else away from this, take this away. Better is not synonymous with good. We have a long way to go before we get to good. Now, at the start of my speech, I mentioned to you that I would be utilizing scenario and comparison, comparing the US with Nazi Germany. This is a shocking comparison, I'm sure. Some of you are probably thinking, how could anyone generate an equivalence between the two? You stuck with me, so now here we go. What I would like everyone in the audience to do for me is to close your eyes. I've heard that closing your eyes helps you to imagine better. I would like you to imagine that you're driving in a residential area. This area has a lot of hills, and you've been strapped for cash for a minute, so you haven't been able to give your car the repairs that it needs. Specifically, you haven't been able to repair your emergency brakes. Now, you're driving down a hill in this residential area, and you hear a loud metallic clanking coming from underneath your feet. Your pedal brakes just gave out. Now, you're rolling down this hill at 20 miles per hour, and at the base of the hill is a group of 20 grade school children, and you're about to run over every single one of them. Now, you could swerve to the right and avoid the school children, but then you would be running into a group of 10 elderly people. Or you could swerve to the left and avoid both of these groups, but then you'd be hitting a group of 5 teenagers. You can open your eyes now. Hopefully, you were able to imagine that well enough. My question for you, and I'll give you a couple of seconds to mull this over, is which of those would you pick? Would you continue straight? Would you veer to the right? Or would you veer to the left? Okay, now, I'm not sure that I trust anyone in the audience just enough to be able to actually give me that answer. So I'm going to give you what the correct answer is. It'll kind of be like elementary school, right? Now, for those of you in the audience who had the mindset that you couldn't decide between any of those choices, you may not know this, but what you were utilizing at that point is Kant's categorical imperative, which simply suggests that anything that cannot be universally applied is unjust. If there are any philosophy teachers in the audience, hopefully I didn't run that through too powerful of a cheese grater. Now, applying that to our scenario, what we get is that killing is unjust, regardless of the group that's killed, regardless of the number. That can also be translated to anything that becomes, or anything that is atrocious, regardless of the numbers, regardless of the collateral damage, bad is bad. Now, let me apply that to a real-world scenario to give you a more rooted understanding. During Hitler's Nazi regime, the worst genocide in American history took place, with an estimated death toll of 6 million people. During the Trail of Tears, a lesser-known event, I'm sure, 6,000 Native Americans were relocated off of their native lands and onto reservations. That occurred as a result of the Native American Removal Act, the United States Native American Removal Act of 1830. Now, there are some people, or rather, if we understand Kant's premise correctly at this point, we would understand that regardless of the numbers in those two scenarios, bad is bad. Both of these situations are equally bad. But the problem that exposes the chauvinism in America, the presence of too much patriotism in America, is that we don't tend to understand that premise. What we tend to utilize in America, and perhaps some of you in the audience who were able to make the split-second decision of picking a group to run over, In America, we tend to utilize the utilitarian perspective. And now, what the utilitarian perspective entails is the greatest good for the greatest number. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I wouldn't say that it's a bad thing, but it is a very systematic viewpoint to hold. It's a very inhuman viewpoint to hold. And it's a very, ultimately, it's just a very American viewpoint to hold. Now, the problems that face one member of society, should be issue enough for the entire society to take up cause against. So I would never say that some of these issues that I've highlighted today affect some of us more than others. I mean, they affect all of us because they affect one of us negatively. Change does not make itself. We cannot expect the darkness of the past, the darkness of race-based issues to recede just by standing there with a flashlight. We as an American society need to collectively step forward and face these issues together. Hopefully then, once we've all gotten comfortable being uncomfortable, and that is an oxymoron, I know, but it's what's necessary to do. Once we've all gotten comfortable being uncomfortable with these conversations that are difficult to have, hopefully then the pipe dream that I mentioned in the beginning will become a reality, and America will become the perfect union, the more perfect union that the Constitution claims. Thank you.
All right, so we have 6 speakers who have wowed us in person. We've watched one video clip. We have one more video clip to show you all, and then we have our 2 final live speakers who we are sure you will not want to miss. So our video of the evening, number 2, is from Ivan Coyote, and it is why we need gender-neutral bathrooms, and we hope you enjoy.
Something was so
After these messages.
There are a few things that all of us need. We all need air to breathe. We need clean water to drink. We need food to eat. We need shelter and love. You know, love is great too. And we all need a safe place to pee. Yeah? As a trans person who doesn't fit neatly into the gender binary, if I could change the world tomorrow, to make it easier for me to navigate, the very first thing I would do is blink and create single-stall, gender-neutral bathrooms in all public places. Trans people and trans issues, they've been getting a lot of mainstream media attention lately, and this is a great and necessary thing, but most of that attention has been focused on a very few individuals, most of whom are kind of rich and pretty famous and probably don't have to worry that much anymore about where they're going to pee in between classes at their community college or where they're going to get changed into their gym strip at their public high school. Fame and money insulates these television star trans people from most of the everyday challenges that the rest of us have to tackle on a daily basis. Public bathrooms. They've been a problem for me since as far back as I can remember. First when I was just a little baby tomboy, and then later as a masculine appearing, predominantly estrogen-based organism. Now, today, as a trans person, public bathrooms and change rooms are where I am most likely to be questioned or harassed. I've often been verbally attacked behind their doors. I've been hauled out by security guards with my pants still halfway pulled up. I've been stared at, screamed at, whispered about. One time, I got smacked in the face by a little old lady's purse that, from the looks of the shiner I took home that day, I am pretty certain contained at least $70 of rolled up small change and a large hard candy collection. And I know what some of you are thinking. And you're mostly right. I can and do just use the men's room most of the time these days. But that doesn't solve my change room dilemmas, does it? And I shouldn't have to use the men's room because I'm not a man. I'm a trans person. And now we got these fear-mongering politicians that keep trying to pass these bathroom bills. Have you heard about these? They try to legislate to try and force people like myself to use the bathroom that they deem most appropriate according to the gender I was assigned at birth. And if these politicians ever get their way in Arizona or California or Florida or just last week in Houston, Texas or Ottawa, well then using the men's room will not be a legal option for me either. And every time one of these politicians brings one of these bills to the table, I can't help but wonder, just who will? And exactly how would we go about enforcing laws like these, right? Panty checks? Really? So genital inspections outside of bath change rooms at public pools? There's no legal or ethical or plausible way to enforce laws like these anyway. They exist only to foster fear and promote transphobia. They don't make anyone safer, but they do for sure make the world more dangerous for some of us. And meanwhile, our trans children suffer. They drop out of school or they opt out of life altogether. Trans people, especially trans and gender non-conforming youth, face additional challenges when accessing pools and gyms, but also universities, hospitals, libraries. Don't even get me started on how they treat us at airports. If we don't move now to make sure that these places are truly open and accessible to everyone, then we just need to get honest and quit calling them public places. We need to just admit that they are really only open for people who fit neatly into one of two gender boxes, which I do not. I never have. And this starts very early. I know a little girl, she's the daughter of a friend of mine. She's a self-identified tomboy. I'm talking about cowboy boots and Caterpillar yellow toy trucks and bug jars, the whole 9 yards. One time I asked her what her favorite color was, she told me camouflage. Yeah? So that awesome little kid, she came home from school last October from her half day of preschool with soggy pants on because the other kids at school were harassing her when she tried to use the girls' bathroom. And the teacher had already instructed her to stay out of the boys' bathroom. And she had drank 2 glasses of that red juice at the Halloween party. And I mean, who can resist that red juice, right? It's so good. And she couldn't hold her pee any longer. Her and her classmates were 4 years old. They already felt empowered enough to police her use of the so-called public bathrooms. She was 4 years old. She had already been taught the brutal lesson that there was no bathroom door at preschool with a sign on it that welcomed people like her. She'd already learned that bathrooms were going to be a problem. And that problem started with her and was hers alone. So my friend asked me to talk to her little daughter And I did. I wanted to tell her that me and her mom were gonna march on down and talk to that school and the problem was gonna go away, but I knew that wasn't true. I wanted to tell her that it was all gonna get better when she got older, but I couldn't. So I asked her to tell me the story of what had happened. Asked her to tell me how it made her feel. Mad and sad, she told me. So I told her that she wasn't alone, and that it wasn't right what had happened to her, and then she asked me if I had ever peed in my pants before. I said yes, I had, but not for a really long time, which of course was a lie. Because you know how you hit like 42, 43, and sometimes you just, I don't know, you pee a little bit when you cough or sneeze when you're running upstairs, you know, or you're stretching, don't lie. It happens, right? She doesn't need to know that, I figured. I told her when you get older, your bladder's gonna grow bigger too. So when you get old like me, you're gonna be able to hold your pee for way longer, I promised her. Until you can get home? She asked me. I said yes. Until you can get home. She seemed to take some comfort in that. So, let's just build some single-stall, gender-neutral bathrooms with a little bench for getting changed into your gym clothes. We can't change the world overnight for our children, but we can give them a safe and private place to escape that world, if only for just a minute. This we can do. So let's just do it. And if you are one of those people who's sitting out there right now, already coming up with a list of reasons in your head why this is not a priority, or it's too expensive, or telling yourself that giving a trans person a safe place to pee or get changed in supports a lifestyle choice that you feel offends your morality, or your masculinity, or your religious beliefs, then let me just appeal to the part of your heart that probably, hopefully, does care about the rest of the population. If you can't bring yourself to care enough about people like me, then what about women and girls with body image issues? What about anyone with body image stuff going on? What about that boy at school who's a foot shorter than his classmates, whose voice still hasn't dropped yet, hey? Oh, grade 8, what a cruel master you can be, right? What about people with anxiety issues? What about people with disabilities or who need assistance in there? What about folks with bodies who, for whatever reason, don't fit into the mainstream idea of what a body should look like? How many of us still feel shy or afraid to disrobe in front of our peers? And how many of us allow that fear to keep us from something as important as physical exercise? Would all those people not benefit from these single-stall facilities? We can't change transphobic minds overnight, but we can give everybody a place to get changed in so that we can all get to work making the world safer for all of us. Thank you for listening. Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Lots of great innovative ideas so far this evening. So I know that some of you are coming in, grabbing your seats. We have two more, like I said, fabulous speakers for you. And without further ado, we're going to bring up our second to last speaker.
Our next speaker is Brianne Messiah with her speech entitled The Complex Triangle Between Us, Earth, and the Future.
Some of you may not know this, but we live right next to the heart of California's ecosystem. It's the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta. Does this place sound familiar to any of you? Well, why should you know about the Delta? And how is it important to you and me? 80% of the state's commercial fishery species either live in or migrate through the Delta. It's also the habitat for diverse types of species, including endemic ones, which are organisms that can be found in only specific parts of the world. Among these species is the famous Delta smelt, and sadly, it's endangered. The Delta is also used to export goods from all major California cities and import resources from all around the world. More importantly, the Delta provides 22 million people with drinking water. Currently, California's population is approximately 39.25 million, meaning that 56% of Californians receive their fresh water from the Delta. So what have we done to harm the Delta? Well, first thing that should come into mind are water pollutants. These pollutants can be traced back to pesticides in agricultural runoff, illegal dumping in storm drains, and even hazardous waste materials from commercial and industrial sites. The introduction of invasive species is also harmful to the health of the Delta. There are currently 6 invasive plant species, and that number is growing. These invasive species are non-native to the ecosystem and can cause economic, environmental, and human harm. Among those invasive species is the water hyacinth, sponge plant, Brazilian waterweed, curly-leaf pondweed, water primrose, and the yellow star thistle. So what else have we done to harm the Delta? Major destruction of the area's wetlands and river habitats have contributed to that. This includes water supply operations that change the directions of the rivers flowing out of the Delta, causing native species to be on the verge of extinction. So, what can we do? There are many things we can do, and I'm trying to tell you how we can do that. While growing up in Japan, I remember seeing an ancient 100-year-old tree in the middle of a construction site. And do you know what happened to that tree? It wasn't just cut down, but instead uprooted and planted somewhere else. That construction crew understood the connection between themselves and that giant tree. So why can't we? There are 3 components that I think anyone can be involved in to change the environment and the health of the environment. For one, that's on the personal level, being environmentally aware. Our actions, no matter how big or small, affect the environment in either a negative or positive way. Making small changes to our lifestyle also go a long way to making a difference to the environment. Whether that be composting, because after all, food waste is the most ridiculous type of pollution we have, or turning off your water or lights when you're not using it, buying more sustainable foods, so instead of beef, try chicken and eggs, or instead of tuna, try a plant-based diet. Or we can also implement energy-efficient technologies to our homes, like a gray water system,
which takes wastewater from your sinks or kitchens and irrigates your plants in your front yard. The second component to changing the environment is education. Take classes. Be involved. Watch documentaries or even TED Talks. And never stop asking questions. I personally would not have known of the effects that Delta has on us and the problems it's going through without me taking a bio class. And in that bio class, I was experimenting and studying the invasive plant species Brazilian waterweed. For those of you that love being outdoors, I highly recommend going to East Bay Regional Parks and joining their Citizen Scientist program. This is a program that allows people to learn about our native species and how we can maintain them and help them grow. We're lucky enough to live in one of the most environmentally conscious states in our country, so take advantage. People don't really know that there are so many local organizations and rebates and initiatives that we can take advantage of. Here are some local organizations to name a few. There's the Bay Delta Project, Contra Costa Sustainable, and the Delta Informal Gardeners, just to name a few. Here are also some rebates and initiatives that you should take advantage of, whether it's Contra Costa County's Lawn to Garden program, or Cal Recycle's used oil campaign, or even Solar City's solar panels. By taking these 3 steps and learning how we are connected to the environment helps us live longer in this world and take care of the world. If I mapped out every single living entity in the world and all the connections it has with others, this is what it would look like. Infinitely expanding. Someone once told me that if all the insects in the world were to disappear, within 50 years, all forms of life would end. If human beings disappeared from the world, within 50 years, all forms of life would flourish. Now think about that. If all humans disappeared from the earth, all forms of life would flourish. Everything we do affects nature, and we are affected by nature. So a future that's more environmentally sustainable starts here. It starts with us. And that is the complex triangle between us, Earth, and the future.
Our final speaker for tonight is Nina G, presenting Stutter Interrupted.
I am the San Francisco Bay Area's only female stuttering stand-up comedian. And did you all know that Marilyn Monroe stuttered? She did. That's why she talks like this. Because if you talk like this, you can trick your brain into not stuttering because you're talking from the right side instead of the left side. Pretty interesting, right? I once told that to a gentleman, if you want to call him that. A gentleman that I was talking to, and he said, "That's very sexy. Perhaps you should talk like that all the time." I was like, "No, that's cool. I think that I'd rather stutter." And that is the thing, is that people think that stuttering is the issue. People think that the disability that I have is the issue. But if you ask a person what a person with a disability, what the biggest problem is they won't say that it's the disability. They will say that it's the barriers in the environment, and attitudes and low expectations from others are the biggest barriers in the environment. And it's like a joke that I have in my act that goes like this. I'm part of a comedy troupe called the Comedians with Disabilities Act. So it's me, a guy who uses a wheelchair, another guy who's blind, and another guy who's a little person, and people come up to me all the time and they say, you know, Nina, stuttering and learning disabilities, because I have those too, those aren't real disabilities and you should be in that comedy troupe. And I explain to them, if you look at the definition of what a disability is, according to the Americans with Disabilities Act, it's a physical or mental impairment that substantially results in having to deal with assholes. So I'm pretty sure it qualifies. And the way that that translates for me is a lot of times I'll be trying to say my name, for example. It comes out like, like that. And what people will do sometimes in the midst of my na-na-na is this with their hands. Yeah, because this helps me. This is good. This and telling me to spit it out, all very helpful. Once I was introducing myself to another comedian, and I stuttered just a tiny bit on my name, and he said, is that Nina with 5 N's? I know. I said, well, I stutter, and that's Nina with 2 N's, and I did this. Which, by the way, it's a slight exaggeration. I actually said that's Nina with 1 N, because I also have dyslexia and forgot I had 2 N's in my name. So, kind of how that went. And the problem with stuttering is that I am interrupted. My title of my TED Talk is A Stutterer Interrupted, like Girl Interrupted, like the movie, the book. It's very clever, right? It's very clever, in case you didn't, very clever. And the problem isn't always in the interruption from others, but the biggest problem has been the interruption that I have put on myself. I have interrupted myself in my development. I've interrupted myself in my desires, in my dreams, in my wishes. And it's hard to flip you all off and click at the same time, so I have to put the clicker down. It's really hard to coordinate that. Okay, okay, oh, not there. Okay, so there is a theorist on stuttering by the name of Joseph Sheehan. And he said that stuttering is like an iceberg. That what most people see at the very top is the stuttering, and what lies beneath the water's surface are the feelings that a person who stutters has. And he said that these feelings are shame, denial, guilt, anxiety, fear, hopelessness, and isolation. But the way that I see it is that icebergs are a lot like clouds in the sky. That you can lay in the grass and look at the clouds, and from one perspective you might see a monster, from another you might see a bunny rabbit. So it's important to shift your perspective of your stuttering iceberg to see what else might be there, and perhaps even consider what you want your stuttering iceberg to be. And this is what I would like mine to be. Instead of denial, there is acceptance. Instead of anxiety, there is kindness. Instead of guilt, comfort. Fear, courage. Where there is hopelessness, there is hope. And where there is isolation, there is community. And where there is shame, there is pride. And I have a couple of stories that I hope illustrate these. When I was in the 3rd grade, I was diagnosed with a learning disability, and that was about the same time that I started to stutter. And I went to Catholic school in the 1980s. Yeah, okay, just so we're clear on that. And every single year, my parents would have to ask my teachers for accommodations. And these would be like things like spelling wouldn't count on my geography test. It was things like that. That if I knew the answer, but if I spelled it wrong, I would still get credit. And every single year, they were met with the same response from my teachers, which was, if Nina received those accommodations, it really wouldn't be fair to the other kids. And if she needs those things, then maybe she doesn't belong in this school. And maybe she just isn't that smart. Now keep in mind, I have my doctorate, so maybe they were wrong. Maybe they were wrong there. But year after year, I received these same messages from my school. And year after year, it started to eat away at my self-esteem. It started to eat away at who I thought I was and what I was capable of. And it ate away at my sense of belonging in school. And it even resulted in very painful feelings that I didn't want to be around anymore. And I'm sharing these very personal and very painful things with you so that you have a context for what I did to my 8th grade teacher. Okay, just warning there. So in the 8th grade, my teacher, she did give me the accommodations, but she gave me an F for using the accommodations. And so I spent a lot of the 8th grade in the bathroom. Like anytime that I had to read out loud, stuttering, dyslexics, we don't really like to read out loud in front of the class, just FYI. And so I would go to the bathroom all the time. I spent most of the 8th grade in the bathroom. And there was this one time when my friend Heather came in, and she was holding the teacher's coffee cup because the teacher had asked her to get her water. Yeah, that's right. That's when it occurred to me. I was like, Heather, what if you just put a little teeny bit of toilet water in that coffee cup? Just a teeny tiny bit. And we went over and we dunked it in, and we filled the rest of it up with tap water. And I went back to my 8th grade teacher, I went back to my class, and I saw my teacher drink toilet water. And I have to say, I felt so empowered, everyone. And I'm sharing that here with you all because there's a lot of educators here, and my message is, watch your coffee cups. Do not let your coffee cups out of your sight. But the other part is that I had a voice that wasn't being heard. I had a voice that wasn't being realized. And strangely enough, that was about the same time that I started to want to be a comedian. And stand-up comedy was something that I loved my entire life. And for me, I started to write jokes when I was in high school. I started to call up open mics to see if they allowed minors. My jokes that I wrote, they were awful jokes. They were terrible jokes. But my bad jokes were not why my dream was deferred. It wasn't why my dream went dormant. It was because nobody like me did stand-up comedy. I didn't see people like me on TV. And the things on the first iceberg were the things that I believed about myself. 25 years after that dream went dormant, I went to a stuttering conference. And at a stuttering conference, there was 500 people who spoke like me. There were 500 people where if you said your name, they just waited. It's where you could strike up conversations in the elevator without concern. And it's also where I was reflected in the people that I was talking to, and I also saw the person that I wanted to be. Coming back from that conference, what I realized was that as a woman, I was relinquishing space over to everybody else. That I didn't, like a lot of times, women, we don't take up space, that we are socialized to be small. And as a woman who's stuttered, I really didn't want to put my speech onto other people. I didn't want them to have to deal with my repetitions. And understanding that and seeing other women who were like me made me understand that I needed to take up more space in the conversations that I had, but also in the relationships, because this spread over to the relationships I was in. It spread over to making myself small in the dreams and the wishes that I had. And what happened was I transformed my iceberg, and I started to have pride and acceptance, and most of all, community. And with those things, within a few months, I started doing stand-up comedy, and I've been doing it for the past 8 years. Oh. Each of us who stutters or who has a disability needs to look at the icebergs that we have and the icebergs that we want to transform into. But all of you, whether or not you stutter or have a disability, you also hold an iceberg because you have been influenced by our society and by our media. And you need to analyze the projections and the stigmas that you might hold and how others might respond there. And I hope today you are challenged to transform your own icebergs and to disrupt the interruptions. Thank you so much.
Was that sensational? I get to come back up here, and I'm so proud of the evening. It's just a wonderful, wonderful event. Before I introduce two people that you're going to give a round of applause to, and incidentally a standing ovation for, I wanted to just make sure that we recognized a few people who really did a lot of technical things for us today. And so one is Eloise Chapman, who is on camera. John Shaw doing video for us today. Devon is with Looking View Productions, and he is doing the streaming for us. Thank you very much, Devon. And we have Kyle and Gabriella doing camera work for us as well. A lot of really great help. Staff people from the campus. I really, really want to thank the two people who I introduced at the very beginning. Just a sensational effort, and I know they're going to want to come up here and give recognition one more time to our speakers today, but please would you give a round of applause for Marie Archidiacono and Lori Huffman.
Anything that came to mind while they were sharing information, maybe just simply ask them a little bit about their lives. They're here, they're fabulous, and they belong to LMC.
where you can engage with our speakers one-on-one or in small groups to have those very intimate conversations that TED inspires after you hear these really amazing ideas. So, one tiny bit of housekeeping though is those awesome name badges that you all have. We need those back. You can keep the one you wrote your name on, but we need the holders so that we can reuse them. I learned from Brianne's speech, right, that the environment and our earth is very important. So I would like to recycle. Oh, yes. All right, so we got all of our gifts going out, and as we are finishing up with that housekeeping, I just want one last time to thank our awesome media guy who's been sitting over there making sure the PowerPoints and the videos were shot and needed to look all of our resources this evening, and we are so thankful again to the Innovation Grant here at Las Vegadas College for helping sponsor this event, and to everyone who helped make a dream that Lori and I had a reality. So thank you all so much. We want to see you in the foyer, having those great discussions, and taking lots of pictures with our awesome signage. Thank you all for coming.